we talk about carbon markets and carbon, what do we really mean?
Thanks, Natasha. So, look, carbon markets are, in a really broad sense, they are structures that have been created by public and private institutions with the aim of commodifying atmospheric carbon and other greenhouse gas equivalents and allowing them to be valued, to carry a price, and ultimately to be traded. So, I know that's a very sort of dry theoretical answer. Practically, what does that mean? Well, broadly, we like to categorize them into two streams. So on the one hand, we've got compliance markets driven by governments generally. And on the other hand, we've got voluntary markets, which are privately constructed. So compliance markets are essentially a tool. They're implemented by governments to reduce overall emissions of economies around the globe. And that's generally in an attempt to meet international climate commitments like the Paris Agreement. They generally involve some form of cap and trade scheme where carbon credits, or the units in this market, are created to place a price on each tonne of emitted carbon. And then the big emitters are regulated such that excessive pollution requires a commensurate purchasing of those credits. So the most prominent compliance market that people on this call might be familiar with would be the European Emissions Trading Scheme. So that's administered by the EU. It's very well established. It's highly financialized. It's a cap and trade scheme. The supply is controlled by the government. And then there are certain participants in that economy that are obliged to purchase and surrender these certificates if they emit beyond a certain allowable threshold. So that's compliance markets, carbon markets. On the other hand, there are also voluntary markets. And in some ways, these can be thought of as the reverse. So they are primarily not administered by sovereign governments. They're generally constructed by private entities in conjunction with international non-government organizations as well. And these markets are designed to recognize and commodify the opposite, and that's taking carbon out of the atmosphere or preventing it from being emitted at all in the first place. So many of those tuning in today have probably seen some sort of news coverage in relation to these international markets at some point in the past 6-12 months. And that is because there is a very spirited discourse at the moment around the best measures to ensure effectiveness and integrity of these markets, so they're continuously improving. But the reality is that they are growing enormously. And this is driven largely by increasing decarbonisation commitments from institutions of all sizes, as well as individual consumers. They're making their own decisions about how to reduce or offset their emissions, as well as getting huge amounts of pressure from stakeholders across their value chain. So that's shareholders and investors, but it's also suppliers, and it's from consumers, it's from governments, and in some cases, it's even from some financiers across their supply chain.